Emily stepped out of the subway station and took a deep breath. She was finally here, in the heart of the bustling city, where people hurried past, briefcases in hand, heels clicking on the pavement. It was a world away from her quiet hometown. Today was her first day at her new job as an engineer at Bridgeworks, one of the most prestigious architecture and engineering firms in the city. As she walked toward the building, Emily's excitement mixed with a tinge of nervousness. She had worked hard for this opportunity, facing endless exams, projects, and late-night study sessions to prove that she belonged in this male-dominated field. Now, here she was, ready to take on new challenges and eager to learn from experienced professionals. The office was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. Emily felt a surge of motivation as she took in her surroundings. She made her way to the conference room, where she'd been told her team was meeting. Entering, she noticed that the room was already filled with people, most of them men, all engrossed in conversation. She felt a few curious glances, but smiled and introduced herself with confidence. "Hi, I'm Emily Rogers, the new engineer," she said, shaking hands with her team members. Some greeted her warmly, but others offered only a quick nod, barely looking her way. She brushed it off, focusing on making a good impression. Then she met Mark, one of the senior engineers on her team. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man in his early 40s, with a confident smile and a firm handshake. At first, he seemed friendly enough, asking her about her background and previous experience. But as their conversation continued, he threw in a few remarks that left Emily feeling uncomfortable. "So, Emily, you're an engineer, huh?" Mark said, raising an eyebrow. "Not a lot of women go for this line of work. Guess you must like a challenge." Emily forced a polite smile. "I do, actually. I'm really excited to be here and learn from everyone." Mark chuckled and leaned back in his chair. "Well, just make sure you keep up. This isn't exactly the kind of work where we can go easy on you." Emily felt a knot form in her stomach, but kept her face neutral. She didn't want to come across as overly sensitive, especially on her first day. She told herself that Mark probably didn't mean any harm. Maybe he just had an old-fashioned sense of humor. The meeting began, and as the team discussed the current project, a complex bridge design for a new city park, Emily listened attentively, eager to contribute. When she finally found an opportunity, she spoke up, suggesting a structural improvement she had researched in graduate school. But as soon as she finished speaking, Mark waved his hand dismissively. "Yeah, we've got it covered," he said, without even looking at her. He immediately turned to another team member as if Emily hadn't spoken at all. She sat back, feeling a pang of frustration. She wanted to contribute, to prove she had valuable ideas, but instead her thoughts were brushed aside without a second thought. She couldn't ignore the slight sting in her chest. As the day wore on, Emily tried her best to stay focused. Every time Mark or one of the other senior engineers made a joke that hinted at her being out of place or less capable, she forced herself to smile along. After all, she reasoned, she was still new. Maybe things would get better once she proved herself. Emily spent her first day quietly observing, taking notes, and learning the team dynamics. But by the end of the day, she couldn't shake a nagging doubt. She had come here with high hopes and ambitions, yet she was already beginning to wonder if the path ahead would be as welcoming as she had imagined. Still, as she left the office that evening, Emily held her head high. She reminded herself why she was here and promised to work twice as hard to earn her place. Little did she know, her journey was only just beginning, and the challenges she faced would soon grow larger than she could have ever anticipated. A few weeks into her new job, Emily was finally starting to find her footing. She had learned the daily routines, memorized team members' names, and even picked up on the quirks of her department. Still, her workdays were a mix of excitement and tension, as she kept trying to navigate the unspoken challenges her male colleagues seemed to set. One day, while making her way to the break room, she noticed another woman in the office, sipping coffee and studying some blueprints. She looked about Emily's age, with an easy smile and an air of calm confidence. Emily approached her, eager to make a connection. "Hi, I'm Emily, the new engineer on Mark's team," she introduced herself. The woman smiled warmly. "I'm Rachel. I've been with the company for about 3 years now. It's nice to see another woman around here." They fell into a comfortable conversation, and soon Emily was confiding in Rachel about her experiences so far. She explained how Mark had made her feel unwelcome and how some of the other men seemed quick to dismiss her ideas. Rachel nodded knowingly. "Yeah, I've had my share of those moments too," she admitted, her voice low. "There's a bit of a bias here, if I'm being honest. Some of the guys don't even realize it, but it's there. You just have to be a bit tougher, and it helps to have people who've got your back." Rachel's words gave Emily a bit of relief. It felt good to know that she wasn't alone in this experience and that someone else understood what she was going through. From that day on, Emily and Rachel often had lunch together, sharing stories and advice. Rachel became a friend and mentor, offering Emily a safe space to talk about her frustrations and reminding her to keep going, even when things got tough. Despite Rachel's encouragement, work was still a struggle. Every day, Emily faced new challenges, not only in her projects, but in trying to be taken seriously by her team. Mark continued to make jokes at her expense, always with a smirk and an air of authority. He'd say things like, "Don't strain yourself, Emily, we'll handle the heavy lifting," or "Maybe engineering isn't the best fit if you're looking for something, easier." Emily gritted her teeth through these moments, telling herself that once she proved her worth, the team would respect her. She stayed late most nights, pouring extra effort into her designs and researching innovative solutions. She was determined to make an impact, to show them she was just as capable as anyone else. Then came a critical team meeting to discuss design plans for a high-profile bridge project. Emily had spent countless hours preparing for it, developing a detailed plan that she believed would enhance both the safety and aesthetic of the design. As she presented her ideas, she noticed Rachel in the back of the room, giving her an encouraging nod. But as soon as she finished, Mark quickly took control of the discussion. "Interesting ideas, Emily," he said with a forced smile. "But we've been handling these designs for years. Let's stick to what we know works, all right?" One of the other men laughed, and Emily felt her cheeks flush. Her heart sank as her carefully crafted plan was swept aside without any real consideration. The meeting continued, and her voice faded into the background as the team moved on without her input. As she sat there, listening to others critique her design without offering her a chance to defend it, Emily's confidence began to waver. She'd come here with so much enthusiasm, but now she felt isolated, like an outsider trying to fit into a world that wouldn't open its doors to her. Later that day, Rachel found her in the break room, staring at her coffee, lost in thought. "Hey," Rachel said softly, "don't let them get to you. You're talented and you've got good ideas. It just takes time for some people to come around." Emily looked up, trying to smile. "I thought that if I worked hard enough, they'd respect me, but it feels like I'm hitting a wall every time." Rachel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes it's not just about proving yourself to others. You have to remember why you're here and keep that focus for yourself. Trust me, the right people will notice." Emily took a deep breath, feeling a bit of strength return. She wasn't about to give up, not yet. With Rachel's support, she resolved to keep pushing forward. She would find a way to prove herself, one step at a time. It was a crisp, bright morning, and the team had gathered in the open-plan office space to prepare for an important client presentation. Emily felt confident about her work. She'd spent hours fine-tuning her designs, ensuring every detail was perfect. This presentation was a chance to showcase her skills, and she was determined to make it count. As Emily began to go over her designs, Mark interrupted with a smirk. "Let's make sure we don't get too ambitious here, Emily," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "You might be getting ahead of yourself." Emily paused, caught off guard, but she tried to respond calmly. "I believe these adjustments could improve the structure's durability without sacrificing the design." Mark raised an eyebrow, barely looking at her. "Look, I get it. You want to impress, but maybe stick to what's simple. These kinds of decisions need real expertise." A couple of team members glanced at Emily with awkward smiles, and she felt a familiar flush of embarrassment. But this time, anger bubbled up within her. She had put her best into this project, yet here was Mark, undermining her in front of everyone, dismissing her work as though it were amateur. After the meeting, Emily walked straight to her supervisor's office. She was done staying silent. Her supervisor, Mr. Daniels, was an older man with a calm demeanor. When Emily explained what had been happening, the dismissive comments, the way her ideas were ignored, and how Mark repeatedly questioned her abilities, Mr. Daniels nodded, listening with a look of sympathy. "I'm sorry to hear this, Emily," he said. "You know, he's from a different generation. Sometimes he can be a bit harsh, but that's just his way. Try not to take it personally. We all think you're doing a great job here." Emily blinked, surprised by his dismissive response. "But Mr. Daniels, it's not just about Mark's way. It's affecting my work, my confidence, and it's undermining my contributions to the team." He sighed. "I understand, Emily, I really do. But sometimes you just have to adapt. Show them your talent and they'll eventually come around." Feeling frustrated and dismissed, Emily left his office, her anger now simmering. She realized that if she wanted things to change, she couldn't rely on her supervisor. It would be up to her. That evening, Emily met with Rachel at a nearby cafe. She explained what had happened with Mark and how Mr. Daniels had shrugged off her concerns. Rachel listened quietly, her eyes darkening as Emily spoke. "You know, Emily, I went through the same thing when I started here," Rachel said finally. "I kept my head down, thinking I'd eventually win their respect. But nothing changed. I accepted it because I thought that was just how things were. Now I wonder how many other women have felt the same way." Emily looked at Rachel, feeling a new sense of resolve. "I thought this was just about me," she said slowly. "But maybe it's more than that. Maybe this is about making sure women like us get the respect we deserve." Rachel nodded, her expression fierce. "Then let's do something about it. Let's gather evidence, document every instance of discrimination, every comment, every overlooked idea. If they won't listen to one of us, maybe they'll listen to both." Emily felt a sense of solidarity and power she hadn't felt before. For the first time, she realized this wasn't just her fight. It was a fight for everyone who had been overlooked, dismissed, or silenced. Together, she and Rachel were determined to make their voices heard, to challenge the unfairness they'd both endured. As they left the cafe, Emily's heart was still pounding. But this time, it wasn't with frustration. It was with purpose. Emily and Rachel spent the next few days researching their options. One afternoon, they contacted the union representative for their company. He listened carefully as they explained their experiences and advised them that they could file a formal grievance. To do so, they would need detailed records and witness accounts, as well as documentation of every instance of discrimination they had faced. With determination, Emily and Rachel began their work. They took notes on every dismissive comment, every undermined idea, and every meeting where their contributions had been ignored. Rachel remembered incidents from her early days at the company, sharing stories she'd never told anyone. Together, they collected the details, realizing just how much had gone unchecked. Their actions soon caught the attention of their colleagues. A few female employees, who had also faced subtle discrimination, quietly approached them to offer their support. And to Emily's surprise, some of her male coworkers began to speak up as well. One afternoon, Alex, a younger engineer on the team, pulled Emily aside. "I just want you to know that I see what you're doing and I support it," he said earnestly. "I've seen how Mark treats you, and honestly, it's not right. If there's anything I can do, just let me know." Hearing this from Alex boosted Emily's spirits. She hadn't expected anyone from her team to openly take her side, let alone one of the men. Slowly, others began to acknowledge what was happening. Some were silent but supportive, offering small words of encouragement in private. Others started to ask questions during meetings when Mark tried to dismiss Emily's ideas, forcing him to give her a chance to speak. But as their movement gained traction, Emily and Rachel faced new challenges. rumors circulated around the office, with some suggesting they were troublemakers or that they were overreacting. The added stress was difficult to handle, but Emily stayed focused. Every time she felt doubt creep in, she reminded herself why she was doing this, not only for herself, but for everyone else who had been silenced. Emily's friends and family provided her with a steady source of encouragement. When she told her parents what was happening, they expressed their pride in her courage. Her best friend back home sent her messages every night reminding her to stay strong. Knowing they believed in her made all the difference. Then, through the union, Emily and Rachel were introduced to a seasoned attorney named Linda Parker. Linda had represented other women in workplace discrimination cases and was known for her expertise in handling sensitive situations with a firm hand. Linda met with them after hours in a small conference room, listening intently to their story. "You two have already done so much," she said, nodding in approval. "The evidence you've gathered is compelling, and the support you've gained within the office is a huge advantage. If you're willing, we can make this case public and take formal action." Emily and Rachel exchanged a glance. This was the moment they had been working toward. With Linda's guidance, they knew their fight would finally have the weight it needed. Their courage had sparked something bigger, and now they were ready to bring change, not just for themselves, but for everyone who would come after them. After months of determination and persistence, Emily and Rachel's efforts began to yield results. With the union's support, they presented their case to the company's leadership, providing their documentation and witness testimonies that could no longer be ignored. The evidence painted a clear picture, one that forced the company to confront its own practices. In the following weeks, the company announced a new commitment to creating a fair and inclusive workplace. They promised to implement anti-discrimination policies, enforce stricter guidelines for respectful conduct, and provide mandatory training for all employees. These policies weren't perfect, but they represented a major shift in the company's culture, one that Emily and Rachel had fought for, not only for themselves, but for everyone in the office. News of their success spread quickly, and more employees reached out to thank them. Some shared their own stories, expressing relief that these issues were finally being addressed. For the first time, Emily felt she belonged in an environment that respected her work and valued her voice. After everything, Emily felt transformed. She was no longer the quiet new engineer, eager to fit in despite the injustices around her. She had grown into someone who wasn't afraid to speak up and demand respect. She knew that standing up to unfair treatment was a long journey, but she felt stronger and more confident than ever. One afternoon, Emily and Rachel met at a small cafe to celebrate their hard-won victory. They toasted to their success, feeling the weight of everything they'd accomplished. "To the future," Rachel said with a smile, "and to a workplace that treats everyone fairly." "To the future," Emily echoed, feeling a hopeful excitement. She was ready for the challenges ahead, knowing that her courage and determination had not only changed her life, but had set an example for others as well. When she returned to the office the next day, Emily was assigned to a new project, one that she would lead. As she gathered her team, she glanced at Rachel, who gave her a proud nod. Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to embark on this new chapter, with a hope that the path they had paved would lead to a workplace where everyone could thrive equally.